And welcome everyone. I am very happy to be here and presenting this subject because this is a very, very important subject. We're going to talk about how to get in to the Learn on Demand Systems training management system and schedule and deliver your first virtual class. Now, whenever we talk about classes, we should be talking about easy, right? We're trying to make this simple. We're trying to make this clear and effective. So, how do we go about doing that? Well, first, it should be easy. And with Learn on Demand systems in our training management system or TMS, it is actually easy. The first step that you need to do is you need to create your course. Now, creating a course is like creating a template for your class. I want to have this activity followed by that activity. I want to have a lab, and then I want to have a video, and then I want to have another lab, and so on. You can put those items together as activities in your course. Now, a course may include things like labs. And when we talk about labs, we talk about our lab on demand labs, which is what we'll be showing. We'll be talking about videos. Although, when you put videos in, it is important to remember that the students will have to watch the videos in order, will have to manually click on them to launch. They don't automatically launch. We have ways of doing that inside of the labs if you want videos to appear inside of the labs. But if you want them as separate self-study guides and things like that for some of your courses, you may want to put those in. SCORM content can be edited in a number of tools and then uploaded and put in place. We have all sorts of capabilities with I call them evaluations, but they might be assessments. You can have a student assessment about how the lab went. You can have an instructor assessment about how they thought that the event or the class went. There's a number of possibilities. You can break them down into sections. You can even have it be that they have to complete one and then move to the next in order to proceed. So there's all sorts of capability inside of the course. But other than that, you really only need two pieces of information. What's its name? How long is it? And then the content that you want inside of it. So courses are fairly easy to create. Likewise, classes are fairly easy to create. The only things that you need is you need a course from the previous slide that you created. You need, which is the template, which is going to be used to build out the class. You need the date and time, and we are going to talk about in our best practices or guidelines or recommendations, we're going to talk about keeping time zones in mind. Time zones are really the devil details. Um, it is not in the fact that they're often spicy or mustardy, but in the fact that they are truly the things that will get you. If you schedule inappropriate time zones for global customers, they may not understand when they're supposed to be somewhere, or if you don't take into account whose time zone you're relating to, that is really going to mess you up. So we're going to talk about that in our best practices. You need to know if it's going to be physical or virtual. And right now in this day and age, we're doing a lot of things virtually, but you could even do a hybrid scenario. We do both physical and virtual. We're also going to talk exclusively about virtual on the next slide. And last but not least, you need to know who's going to be teaching it. Now, a class does not require an instructor in order to be created, but it does need an instructor in order to be held. Unless it's going to be self-study, in which case then you can create a self-study class. But quite honestly, a class isn't really self-study. Class is designed to have an instructor and the students and end users be in a place together. Now, the physical and virtual location, when we're talking about virtual, what we're talking about is a meeting host. And you may be familiar with some of these names like Adobe Connect or Zoom or Cisco WebEx. But all of the logos you see here are currently have the ability to work as classrooms for a class inside of the Learn on Demand Systems TMS. We use what are called virtual meeting URLs or virtual meeting host URLs, and you can put those custom URLs in and have a connect to class, be present inside of your class quickly and easily. Now, Adobe Connect has a much deeper integration capability within our TMS where we can actually schedule the sessions. You can have multiple classrooms running at the same time, depending on your Adobe licensing. You can change instructors quickly and easily. You update dates or times, and it updates the meeting host automatically. Whereas some of these other connections with the URLs will require a little bit more manual effort on your part to reschedule or change instructors. So any virtual meeting host works with Learn on Demand systems. You can choose whichever one it works best for your organization and schedule it quickly and easily. Now, as I mentioned, we are going to talk about what your keys to success are. What are some suggestions that we have? Keeping track of the time. And I don't mean inside of the actual class. I'm talking about when you're scheduling it. Now, when you create a class, you're creating it within a time zone. Let's just say, for instance, that you are a training center that is based in New York. You're going to be in the Eastern time zone. You're going to schedule things for the Eastern time zone. But if you schedule a class to start at 8 a.m. in the Eastern time zone, that means if you happen to have any students who are attending virtually from LA, they're going to be getting up pretty early. That's going to be a 5 a.m. start time for them. Now, that's what I mean by keeping time zones in mind, because it is really important to remember, especially if you're going to be teaching globally, it is really important to remember that when you set a start time, that is the start time for the time zone you have selected for that class. So if the time zone is going to be Chicago time, Central Time, then if you are dealing with London time, you can add about 8 hours or 6 hours or 7 hours, depending on, I think it's depending on daylight savings time. But it ends up being adding quite a bit of extra time. So if you schedule something for a class from 8 until 5 or 8 until 4, that class will actually be ending around 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at London time. So you want to be very careful about how you schedule and what your time zone is. The beauty of the class is that you can schedule the time zone for the class and have it be for London, so that your time zone is going to look weird. It's going to be scheduled for, I don't know, 4 a.m. or whatever it is, but that's going to get them started at the right time for them. Those time zones are going to be very important, and you will want to take them into account. Make sure you put all of the needed items like labs and evaluations and assessments and SCORM content and videos. Make sure everything is in the course. You don't want to try to add on resources to the class, because it's too easy to forget those every time you're scheduling the class. Put it into the course, and that will become the template for all of the other classes. Unify your virtual classroom and course resources into a class. A class is an instance of using the classroom and the classroom resources, or the course resources. From the second you assign the instructor, remember I said you don't have to assign the instructor right away, but from the second you do assign an instructor to a class, you will allow them to be able to launch that class page and be able to get into the labs to begin prepping. So the sooner you do that, the better your instructor is going to feel about the content within that class. Now, a lot of instructors teach the same things over and over, so they get to know what's going on. But remember, in this day and age, the only constant is change. And so these labs that they may be very used to might change between when they've taught it last month and when they're teaching it this month. So making it available to them so that they see the updates is going to be very important. It's also important to note that instructors can actually prep for classes before it goes on their schedule, provided that you have made a course for it, because they can actually access the courses for your organization once they've been assigned as an instructor for your organization. And don't forget, Using the Adobe Connect integration features, or coming soon, the Zoom integration features, will get you recordings and pre-configured classroom layouts and things like that that you can only do with that deep API integration as opposed to using the custom host URL. Our goal here is to educate anywhere. As long as you take time zones into account, you have a comprehensive, easy to use, complete end-to-end experience in one place for you, your students, and your instructors. All of them accessing one page that you have created with doing two simple steps: create a course and create a class. Now, what happens if you get stuck? Are you on your own? Well, of course not. We're here for you. We have assistants just around the corner. We have a entire staff of people who are waiting for you to be able to help you out. We have 24/7 technical support available, and all of our technical support people are here in our company, and they're here 24/7 available to help you. Every single page inside of the TMS, for a ops manager, for a scheduler, for an instructor, for a student, every single page has a help button or a help link. When you click on that, that will take you to documents for being able to work within, or it will take you to how to get to your help in the case of if you're in a student's lab. All right. And we also have a fully functioning tech support page just on our website, which will allow you to file a ticket or figure out how to reach out to us. And you can do that at www.learnondemandsystems.com/customer-support. So now that we've covered that, let's take a look at what it takes and how this process works. We're going to start from beginning and work all the way through until we have an instructor and student in a class and take it from there. So let's take a look. Here I am on my manager account. Please note that you can look in the upper right-hand corner and you can see that I'm listed as a manager. Now, in that particular case, I have 2 or 3 different accounts. I have an instructor, a manager, and a student. This manager happens to have a lot of capability inside of this environment. You can see here a whole list of things that they can do. Your mileage may vary. As a scheduler, you may only be able to schedule classes. You may not be able to create courses. As an operations manager, you may see all of these things or only some of these things. It's important to remember what you can do and not necessarily where you do it. While I'm here, I just want to show a really important aspect of our TMS, which is that if there are any notifications, you will see them in the upper right-hand corner. These are very important. For example, notifications that are talking about what's going on with the status of certain labs, or if there's an outage, or if a certain lab is unavailable for a certain reason, that these notifications are up here, or in some cases will show you exactly information like the fact that there is a set of webinars going on this week, as is the case here. All right. So it's important to remember that there are notifications for you in the TMS. All right, so here we are in the TMS. Let's get started. First thing I want to call out is, and I'm going to call this out every time I see it, is the help. You remember that help is just a click away. All you have to do is click on help and it will get you started. But we are concentrating on courses, which is right here, and classes, which is right there. All right. Notice that these boxes move around, so I don't want you to look at where they're located. Just look for a box that says classes and a box that says courses. We're going to start with creating a course. This is getting us off the ground, creating a template for all of the things that are going to follow. So we're going to call this, we're going to call this a course for tips and tricks demo. All right. And we'll call this Brian 02. There are fields in here that are version and description and keywords and things like that. But realistically, you need a name. You don't even need a short name, but I like to have a short name because it makes it easier to find. You will want to confirm that it is for your organization. If you have multiple organizations or sub-orgs, you can assign it to a specific organization. Make sure it is in the training program. Set the duration and specifically the training days. In this case, I'm going to set it to 1. And then I have to choose a content provider, which is going to be this Career Rocket company that I'm in. And then I need to, there's one field that is important, which is for publishing groups. And once again, that will be under Career Rocket. But the next field that I want to show you is activities. This is the big one. This is where you start to build that template like I showed you. For example, if you want to add a lab. Now, I only have one lab available here, so I'm going to do a search for it, but you might have a whole list of labs that are available to you. I should note that these are labs and activities that are available to your organization. They are not ones that come from other content providers. Other content providers will provide you with the courses, you just deliver the classes. So you won't need to build a course for, say, CompTIA or something like that, as a content provider. Those courses will already be built. You will just simply build a class around that course. This is for a custom class with your own material. All right. So I click on this, I click on Career Rocket Demonstration Lab, and I click on OK, and it adds it. Now I could break it down into sections. I could add SCORM content. I could add an external link to a website. So let's do that real quick. Let's add a link to an external website, and we will call this webinar, if I can spell, webinar list of events. And then I can put the URL in, which in this case is https://webinar week. All right. And I could again put it in a description. And when we save this now, you will see that we have created a course, or as they call it, a course profile. We have it listed here, and we have our activity and our other activity. There is all of the stuff that we need for a course. Now, if I'm an instructor, and I'm going to switch my screen here, if I am an instructor and I am inside of Career Rocket like I am here, and I just make sure I'm on this page, when I go to find courses and I type the word demo, you will see that I see course for tips and tricks demo, and I can search this, and now I can go through and do these exercises by clicking on them. And you see here that it takes me to my web page, or if this is a lab, I'll actually get a launch button. So this is what I was talking about, how your instructors can actually prepare before the class is scheduled, as long as it's a course and it belongs to your company, and so do they as far as their organization for their instructor account. They're going to be ready to go and be able to start prepping on this. But if you really want to give them what they need, you need to schedule a class. So let's look at that. Once I'm here, I can go back to my administration page or my home page by simply clicking on the logo in the upper left-hand corner. This logo can vary, like it is here with Career Rocket. It might be your company's logo. Otherwise, it will be a Learn on Demand Systems logo in the upper left-hand corner. If you click on that, you will see your site administration page, and now we're going to create a class. And we're going to use this course, and we're going to do a search for demo once again. And you see here the course for tips and tricks demo. Again, this is the template, and we're applying that template. So we click on it, click on OK. You see that the display name automatically changes to course for tips and tricks demo. That might not be the name that we want. So we're going to call this, Brian's new class for tips and tricks. I could even put whatever time zone that this was going to be held in. So we can add uh, Pacific. Ah, there we go. So now I'm going to change my time zone for this class. Remember, it's just for this instance, not for the whole course, not for every class that gets created after, but I'm going to change this to the Pacific time zone. And now when I schedule this, it will be scheduled based on Pacific. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, I'm going to pick a session time and let's schedule this for a couple days out, not tomorrow. We'll schedule it for Thursday. On Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific until Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific. And I click on OK. And that set up my time. I'm going to set it up for delivery and I'm going to do virtual. Now, notice that it defaults when I do virtual to the Adobe Connect that I have set up for this company, but I could also put in a custom virtual classroom URL by putting in like a Teams meeting URL. So I would have created the Teams meeting, I've gotten the URL, and I paste it in here to give them the classroom. In this particular case, though, I'm going to switch it back to Adobe Connect because it's easier to use. And then I'm going to assign an instructor. I happen to know a good instructor that works for this company, but he might have schedule conflicts, so I'm going to turn that off. And it's the Brian instructor account. And I add him. And that's it. That's all it takes to schedule a class or create a class. You just need to know the date and time, and you need to know a couple of other pieces of information, such as, is it going to be virtual? If it's going to be virtual, how is it going to be virtualized? And then who the instructor is. Now, remember, you don't have to put an instructor in just to create the class. If you want to put something out on your class calendar or your class catalog, you want to be able to have it out there, you can have this listed and add an instructor after the interest has gotten enough to be able to assign an instructor, but it is always nice to have the instructor in soon. So let's go ahead and click on save. And now I've got my class out here. You can see that I've got my virtual classroom assigned. I've got my 2 different activities here. Now let's go back to my instructor page. Here's my instructor. And remember, we did a find courses earlier, but now this has actually been assigned to this instructor for their calendar. So let's go into this instructor's calendar and notice that on, well, I'm on March still, but on Thursday, this instructor is in the central time zone. We scheduled this for 8 a.m. Pacific, so it did the math for us so that the instructor knows, hey, you're starting at 10 a.m. your time. So when I click on this, even though I am in the central time zone, it's showing me when this is taking place in the Pacific time zone because that's the home place or the home time zone of this class. And I have my activities here and I can click on the launch buttons just like the student could. All right. Now I'm going to leave this one alone and I'm going to show you an already configured class for from the manager perspective, the instructor perspective. We're going to launch activities in there, and then you're going to see what it looks like. So let's take a look really quick here at our classes, and we're going to find class for the for today. There we go. And here is the instructor's Adobe demonstration class for tips and tricks. And you'll notice that we have a lab activity in here, and we have a couple of other things available to us here. All right. So this is the class that we have previously scheduled for today. Now, let's look at this class from both an instructor and as a student's perspective. So here is the instructor page, and I'm going to go ahead and look at my classes, not for the future, but for today. and click on my Adobe demonstration class. Notice that I have my enter classroom because today's class is going on and I can enter that classroom, as well as a launch button for my lab. I am going to go ahead and enter the classroom, and this takes just a second to spin up. And while I'm spinning this up, I'm going to close up this extra window. I'm also going to do the same for the student. Oh, wait, students. We didn't talk about how to schedule students. So let's talk about how to schedule students. I forgot to do that, and I'm going to go back and show you. When we're inside of the manager, I'm sorry, I'm back in the instructor. Here we go. When you're inside of the manager's screen, you have the ability to schedule students. So let's find that class that we made for Thursday. So we're going to take a quick look at our classes here. Here is Brian's new class for Tips and Tricks Pacific. Right now, if we look at our roster is empty, but there is a button right here to add students. This is so quick and easy that I completely forgot about it. So we go ahead and add the student. And in this case, again, I know an excellent student who starts with Brian. And we're going to add Brian's student and click on OK. And notice that we're setting him to enrolled, and I save the changes. That means that it's been done. I'm done. That's it. That's all it takes. Now, this student account does need to exist, and we want to make sure that we have that student account. If necessary, we would need to create that student account for the student. We have other ways of getting students into classes, but this is the easiest and quickest. All right, so now that we've actually done that, let's go back to my instructor here and find my class for today. There we go. So here we are inside of the class. You can see that we do have a student assigned to this particular one. And here is the student's interface. Now the student is looking at my training, and they are not only are they scheduled for the new class for tips and tricks, but they're also a member of this class, the Adobe demonstration class for tips and tricks. They also have an enter classroom button. So here is the instructor's classroom in Adobe Connect. Now I'm going to launch the classroom for the student in Adobe Connect. And in a second here, you're going to see the student's environment come up as well. While I'm doing that, I'm also going to launch the lab so that you can see what the lab interface looks like from the student's perspective and how the instructor can use it. So going back here to, this is the Adobe Connect classroom for the instructor. And here's the Adobe Connect classroom for the student. Please note, instructor Brian and student Brian are here. The instructor is able to share their screen, do their webcam, communicate effectively, and the student will see all of that information. So you've set up a classroom, you've connected to the classroom. The student has launched a lab, and their lab is now available here for the instructor to use. I'm sorry, for the student to use. There we go. And they're into their lab and they're working away. Now, we're back to the instructor page. You can once again see instructor in the upper right-hand corner. And my instructor wants to know how their student is doing. Not only the instructor, but the ops manager or the scheduler wants to see how classes are doing. So once again, we're going to find classes from today. I just like to show the multiple ways of being able to view this information. You can see here that as a ops manager or as a scheduler, I also have the button for monitor labs. So I can monitor the lab and I can see who's in the lab, how long they've been in that lab, what they're doing. You can see a thumbnail, and if I need to, I can click on monitor and see exactly what they're up to. This is very helpful for troubleshooting. It's very helpful for engaging with your students and keeping them going and keeping their interest. Then when everything's all done, the student is going to end their lab. We are going to end our class or our event here. I'll end my meeting and click on OK. You'll notice it doesn't just close it for the instructor, it also closes it for the student. And then we saw that the student's lab was closed. And if we search, you'll see that we see no other information about the monitor. And we can go in and we can say that the student has finished their lab and is complete, and save changes, and we're all set to go. So that's sort of the end-to-end look at all of the different things that you have at your disposal from a course and a class creation. Let's go back to our slides real quick. We want to talk about resources that are available to you as a member of the TMS and as a member of the attendance of this webinar. First of all, you have some excellent documentation that's available to you. Like I said, if you click on the help screen, the help button on any of the TMS screens, you will get to a set of documentation. These two are excellent guides for getting you started. You can actually follow those along, and those resources will be made available to you at the end of this webinar, and I shouldn't say right at the end, later this week as the webinar proceeds. Don't forget that you can sign up for other sessions that are still to come. We still have a whole series of additional components coming in the both with the TMS and with the LOD or Lab on Demand environment, as far as designing labs and thinking about how to best utilize the virtual environment. And with that, I want to say thank you for your time and your attendance. And I want to make sure that you realize that we are very happy to have you here, and that we hope that you have gotten a lot out of this session.